What is going on, everybody? Welcome into my guys list. This is one of my favorite videos that I make every year. So we either have here my guys, which are players that I'd be pounding the table for, whether I was a low-level scout or a GM, saying we have got to get this guy on our team before another team has a chance to draft him. Or inversely, my not my guys, which are players that it's not necessarily that I wouldn't draft them, period. It's just that I'm pretty comfortable letting someone else get them based on where they're projected to go. If they were to fall to where we have them evaluated, we obviously might consider them, but these are guys that I probably would not end up drafting if I were in control of these teams. So I'm super excited for this video. Please do hit that like button if you enjoy. Also, if you can't tell, I am just ridden with excitement for tomorrow's draft. I am excited for you guys to join me for my live stream here on YouTube tomorrow night. Gonna go live about 20 minutes before the draft. So excited to hang out with you guys, get my reactions and analysis of each pick live. So here we go. Starting at quarterback, going position by position. Jordan Love, one of my guys, no surprise here. He is my number 2 quarterback. I believe in the upside, but I also believe in the character and the footballer that is Jordan Love. I think he's a guy that hates losing, that is going to put in the time to weed out some of those mistakes that did show up on film in his final season, in a season where his coach left, 9 out of 10 starters left. I'm willing to overlook some of that stuff and believe in the character, believe in the upside, put him in a situation where he doesn't necessarily have to start day 1, and I can get pretty excited about QB2 Jordan Love. Then I have Jake Fromm making the list. The one thing people don't always understand is you don't have to hit a home run with every draft pick, and that's how I look at Jake Fromm. He's a guy with the processing, the smarts, and the ability to take calculated risks. That is one of few things that I don't think Jake Fromm gets enough credit for. He throws outside the numbers. He takes big chances when necessary. Not to mention Georgia asked him to be incredibly conservative. So he's not just this check down machine. Now, I will admit, there are some things missing as far as the athletic upside, the arm strength, though I do think he senses pressure and extends plays much better than he gets credit for. I look at Jake Fromm as a guy that can be a bridge starter, a day 1 impact as a high-level backup as well. Someone that even in the right situation, like an Indianapolis, a New England, a Pittsburgh, can be a top 15 to 20 quarterback. No, it's not exciting, but you don't have to take Jake Fromm in the top 10. Not every pick is going to be a superstar. But I love the floor of Jake Fromm. I think he gets way disrespected for way too many things. And there is a lot of value in a guy that can be a fringe starter up to a top 15 to top 20 starter in the league on a cheap 4 or even 5-year contract if you were to take him at the end of the first. And I think that speaks for itself. So let's move on. We got Nate Stanley. Keep in mind, guys, rounds 5 to 7, we are talking about dart throws. You really don't know at that point in the draft, but I do think there is something to Nate Stanley. He's got the arm strength. I think his processing was a little better than I expected when I watched him. He also has some play extension, some Big Ben play extension in there with that size where he'll shrug off sackers and do some nice things with his legs. He's not a terrible athlete. You know, basically the way I look at Nate Stanley is I'd much rather have Nate Stanley in the 5th or 6th round than Justin Herbert in the top 10. If there's a 10% chance Justin Herbert becomes a quality starter in my mind, I think there's a 7% chance Nate Stanley can do it. My comparison for him is actually Jacoby Brissett, where I think he has some of those physical tools that could actually make him a quality backup as well. So I wouldn't mind taking him rounds 5, 6, 7 if I needed a backup quarterback and a long shot dart throw on a developmental quarterback. Then my guys, Justin Herbert. I think he screams bust. He's probably going to go in the top 5, top 6. Miami might freaking take the guy at 5th. He's a slow processor. He is sporadic as far as his accuracy. Usually it's pretty good, but when he misses, he totally misses. It's ridiculous. I think he's a definition of a first-read quarterback. This is Mitchell Trubisky, Blake Bortles, all those just guys that screamed bust from the get-go. I think Justin Herbert, this is the same thing all over again, but NFL teams just don't learn. Then Tua. Now, notice I say I wouldn't take him in the top 15, so I do still have a first-round grade on Tua. Once we get past kind of those top 14, 15, like really solid, almost, you never want to say lock, but lock impact rookies. then I'd start thinking about Tua. I am not confident that you are getting a quality NFL player in Tua for two reasons. His tape is simply not as impressive, in my opinion, than everyone makes it out to be. People say his tape compared to Joe Burrow is just as good, which is ridiculous to me. It's just not. He's not as accurate. He's not quite as accurate downfield. He is accurate, but there were some concerning misses, and his technique was off. His film's a bloody 7-on-7 drill. He's got all day to throw. His receivers are wide open. Felt like every week they were running an RPO where a slant goes 80 yards to the house where Tua literally does nothing. A lot of concerns in the red zone. A lot of concerns about sensing pressure, extending plays, knowing when and how to use his feet. He's a good quarterback prospect with major injury concerns. That is a top 32 player in the class, a first-round pick, not a lock top 10 pick. I simply wouldn't be thinking about Tua in the top 10 if I were drafting. And I hope he proves me wrong, but that's my honest opinion. Then we got Jalen Hurts. The hype has really picked up in the last 2-3 weeks. To me, I just see a guy that played a lot out of rhythm, not a guy that did a lot of processing defenses, that had a lot of offense schemed up for him, and had a lot of accuracy concerns on tape. Now, I do like a lot of the things he's done in the pre-draft process. His mechanics at the Senior Bowl looked much better than they did on film. So I understand some of the hype, but a top 50 pick, someone that's been talked about in the first round, I'm just not on board with that. You get into the third, fourth round, you want to take a flyer on a quarterback. I'm comfortable doing that with Jalen Hurts, but not a first, second round pick where you're passing up likely starters in the draft. Then Jacob Eason, I mean, again, just kind of the typical strong-armed quarterback that doesn't bring a whole lot to the table other than the ability to accurately throw the ball downfield when plays are schemed up for him and he gets protection. It's pretty simply put. I just don't believe in what he brings to the table as a quarterback. Then at running back, Anthony McFarland, third, fourth round, taking a gamble on that athleticism, the explosiveness. He's a raw guy. I want to see him improve better as a pass catcher, but he's young. I think he can do that. I think he's worth a gamble in the third, fourth round. Darrington Evans, same thing, really explosive guy. Now, he's more scheme specific. I want to put him in a situation like Minnesota, Green Bay, San Francisco, one of these teams that runs a lot of outside zones where he can utilize that speed to the edge, but he's got a rare trait, and that is the explosiveness on outside zones. Then JaMycal Hasty out of Baylor. I compare him to Aaron Jones, who was another fifth-round pick, just has that burst through the hole, the quickness, good vision. I really liked his game. I was surprised to find out that people aren't higher on JaMycal Hasty than most are. I think he's definitely one of those day 3 picks that we could be talking about year after year after year. It's like, oh, how did this guy fall to the 5th round? He's one of the better running backs in the NFL. I think that JaMycal Hasty has a lot of potential to be that guy. Then Cam Akers. He makes my not my guys list for the very reason we had Hasty, Evans, and McFarland on my guys list. I think Cam Akers is a good player, but in the same tier as guys like Hasty, Evans, and McFarland. I think you're gambling on an athlete, which I don't have a problem with. But why take Cam Akers in the 2nd when you can get JaMycal Hasty in the 4th, 5th round, or Darrington Evans in the 4th round, or you get the point. I don't think Akers is this can't-miss running back that I think you need to be to spend a 2nd-round pick on him, which I do believe that Akers will go in the 2nd or even early 3rd. I wouldn't take him quite yet. Then Josh Kelly, I just didn't quite see it with him. Like, he's pretty fast in a straight line, but I don't really see what he brings to the table. Didn't love his vision, didn't love what he brought to the table in the receiving game. He's projected to go 3rd, 4th round. I'm not on board with that. I think he's closer to an undrafted free agent than a 3rd-round pick. Then Salvon Ahmed. I think he does get drafted 5th, 6th round. Supposed to be this kind of outside zone explosive threat, and he just didn't show speed on tape at all, and he's incredibly undersized. You look at his physical profile, you would say, oh, it's an explosive outside zone runner. He's like, 5'10", 185 or something. Biggest problem with him is not only does he not have the outside explosive speed, but he doesn't even look to bounce the ball outside. Like, he tries to play like a power back. So I just don't think he's a draftable player. Then we have wide receivers. T. Higgins kind of made my guys list. I just think he's getting slept on. Denzel Mims getting pushed above him, for example. Michael Pittman all of a sudden getting pushed above him. Higgins is just the big-bodied possession receiver that I want. It's not Denzel Mims. It's not Michael Pittman. It's T. Higgins. He's got better ball skills. He's a better route runner. Produced better against better competition. Then I got Devin Duvernay. I think he is a day one starter in the slot with a ton of explosive playmaking potential. Never going to be a number one outside guy, which might push him down a little bit, but I know exactly what I'm getting in Devin Duvernay. His ability to adjust to the ball is pretty remarkable. Even on like slants, like flipping his hips if the ball is thrown behind him, which happens to every quarterback in the league. You might miss by a couple inches. He's able to flip his hips, get back, pluck the ball, and keep going. He doesn't drop the ball. Just an excellent slot wide receiver. Then Van Jefferson, there's some injury concerns with him, but I think his tape speaks for itself. He's an excellent route runner. He has some underrated explosiveness, excellent release off the line of scrimmage. He screams Keenan Allen to me. This reminds me almost pound for pound what happened with Keenan Allen, kind of falling to the third round because we didn't get to see those workouts. We didn't get to see him stay healthy necessarily, but just a really refined professional at the wide receiver position that can be a number one outside guy, or just an outside guy. I don't know if he's ever going to be a true number one wide receiver, but I really like Van Jefferson. Then Joe Reed, a really good playmaker, kick returner guy that actually showed more as a receiver than Virginia let him do as far as his vertical game goes. I think he can run some good routes. The one thing that I really like about him is his character. A really impressive interview on Good Morning Football, but also his ball tracking skills really stood out to me. Almost reminded me at times of Antonio Brown, where like, take that for a grain of salt. Like, people will hear that and say, oh my God, you said Joe Reed was going to be Antonio Brown. No, I'm saying he's got plays where, he's on the sideline. He's got great body control. He sees the ball in over his shoulder with a defender draped all over him, but acts like that defender isn't even there, and he's just playing against grass where he just is composed and can see the ball in. I think there's something there in Joe Reed that you can steal in the 4th, 5th round. Tristan Jackson, another guy who brings a deep threat. My comparison for him is Darius Slayton. Quick release, can run slants, that is benefited by the fact that he is that deep threat. Defenders have to play off. You got to be worried about him going deep, and he plays off that really well. Kind of a two-trick pony, so to speak. Can run slants, can run go balls, but just like Darius Slayton did for the New York Giants, I think he's got a skill set that you can really scheme into your offense in a good way. Then we got my not my guys, Laviska Shenault. The injury concerns really bother me, but he's a guy that doesn't really get open on his own. He's a guy that I think you do need to scheme open quite a bit. Now, he's still young, could very much develop some of that release and route running, but just a couple concerns here. I don't think he's a first-round prospect. I do like him in the 2nd, but I think he's probably going to go in the 1st, and I don't know how well that's going to work out. He's got a little Cordarrelle Patterson-esque elements to his game. He has much better hands than Cordarrelle. Then Denzel Mims. I've beaten this one into the bush. I just think the hype has gone too far because of a 40 time and beating up on day 3 corners at the Senior Bowl. He had 4 years at Baylor to break out if he was this elite athlete, and he never really did. His final season at Baylor was good. He made some nice plays, but was wildly inconsistent. I just don't believe in the guy as a first-round talent. 2nd, 3rd round, put him in a good situation with a good quarterback that he can grow up with. Sure. Not in the 1st round like he's getting mocked all the time. Jalen Reagor out of TCU, just not a fan of his game. I think he's a kick return specialist that you have to scheme touches for. That is just incredibly raw as a wide receiver. If you take this guy to be a deep threat and you're, outside starter day 1 in the 1st round, I think you're going to walk away pretty disappointed. I think he's a guy that needs to come in and really learn and develop and not be asked to start right away. So I'm just not in on Jalen Reagor as this 1st-round prospect. Gabriel Davis, Brian Edwards, 2 kind of big-bodied speed threats that just don't have a whole lot of game, to be honest. Like, they just run straight and use their size to out-body defenders. And it works at times in college, but was still wildly inconsistent. In college, it's going to be even more inconsistent. They just need to completely learn how to play football. And these are guys that are going to go 3rd, 4th round that I'm not on board with. I'll gamble on the upside on late day 3 with the speed and size, but not when you're that raw. Then we got tight ends. Not a whole lot. It's just not a very exciting tight end class, but I do like Bryson Hopkins. He's my number 1 tight end. I think other people have him as their number 1 tight end, but he's the first guy I'd take off the board early 3rd round. I think Cincinnati Bengals is kind of a good landing spot for him there at the top of the 3rd round. And then if there is a guy fifth, sixth round that I'm willing to take a chance on. It's Dalton Keene, a good athletic profile that really was just underutilized at Virginia Tech, was just kind of coming into his own, comes out early. I think it's the kind of athlete that you take in the fifth round. Tight end's a position that you really need to learn and develop as a rookie. He wouldn't play much as a rookie, so I think he's a guy that you take, you stash, you see if you can really build up that athletic profile. And then Cole Kmet is a not my guy. I don't hate his game. He's got good hands. He's sort of physical at the catch point. I wish he blocked better. Just doesn't really create separation on his own. Reminds me a lot of Kyle Rudolph, that I've said is very overrated. Now, Rudolph had his best season last year, and if Kmet in the second round turns into what Kyle Rudolph was last year, ironically also at Notre Dame, then sure, that's a good pick. But that's kind of best case scenario is 2019 Kyle Rudolph. I don't know. He's a good player. He's got steady hands. I don't hate him. He's my number 2 tight end. But I think if you take him round 1 or round 2, you're totally reaching in a bad tight end class, just trying to get the quote-unquote best guy if you don't have Bryson Hopkins as your number 1. And I think that's a mistake. Then offensive line. Going to try to pick up the pace a little bit here, but Andrew Thomas, I think you need to work a little bit on his kick slides and his technique. I think Georgia really screwed him over along with Isaiah Wilson, the coaching staff there. I've got a whole nother theory about how bad the Georgia coaching staff is. But other than that, I think Andrew Thomas is underrated athleticism, excellent run blocker. I think he's got the best run block technique in this class. Long arms, a smart pass protector. I have confidence that you can pretty quickly fix his kick slide technique. Because other than that, he is a borderline perfect tackle prospect to me. Then Matt Pert, I have a first round grade on him. I love his yearly development and growth, really coming into his body, getting all the way up to 315 pounds after playing at about 285 his junior year. I think that play strength, the increased play strength really showed in his final year. He was incredibly consistent. I love his technique. I love his kind of career trajectory as a really good athlete, a guy that's only going to continue to get better at the next level at right tackle. Then we got Jack Driscoll in the top 50, just a refined pass blocker. Maybe not going to create the most push as a run blocker, but in the top 50, I think you're getting a day 1 starter at right tackle, and I really like Jack Driscoll. Then Damian Lewis, I think the guy is just a beast. He does struggle as a pass protector, gets caught leaning a lot, which is why he is probably going to fall into the third round. But if you're sitting there early day 3, I'm willing to take a gamble on him as that freak athlete guard. Maybe he doesn't start right away. Maybe you do need to let him come in and coach him up for a little bit, but I do like the upside of Damian Lewis in the third round. Then Nick Harris at center. A second round grade on him. His mobility at center, I think, is going to be very desirable to certain schemes that love moving pockets, that love outside zones. His ability to move block is probably second to none at the center position in this class. Could improve his play strength a little bit, but was a really successful player at Washington. I think it's going to translate to the next level. And for the same exact reasons, Matt Hennessy, a really fluid athlete. He's a year younger, though. His play strength is just not there yet. I do not think he's ready to play year 1, but he was a good player at Temple, is a great athlete. I think late day 2, early day 3, I think you take a chance on Matt Hennessy to develop. And then Alex Taylor, he's a late round tackle prospect here. 5th to a 7th round grade. I don't think he's a very good football player, but I do think that, that 6'7" athletic frame, he's the kind of guy that someone like a Kyle Shanahan or these great offensive line coaches could come in, have him sit for a year or 2, and then maybe you really get a late round steal with that athletic profile at tackle. A true dart throw at the tackle position, but it's a position that's hard to find guys, and I think that it's worth taking a shot on him as opposed to some of these much inferior athletes that also aren't very good football players. Then not my guys at offensive line, Mekhi Becton, simply in the top 10. I think he's a good tackle prospect, but lots of concerns on tape as far as blitz recognition, getting lost in space, allowing guys to get the inside. Didn't see a ton of yearly development at Louisville, which is a concern to me. So I just would much rather take the other 3 tackles ahead of Mekhi Becton. I think it's going to be a mistake if, say, the Giants grab Becton at 4 instead of Andrew Thomas or Wirfs or Wills or any other team does the same. Then we got Ezra Cleveland. He is like instantly gone from a 4th to a 5th round prospect all the way up to a 1st round candidate after the combine. He is a really good athlete. He moves really well, so I get the excitement around him. and he was pretty stable at left tackle. Like, there's nothing really wrong with his technique. He just doesn't play physical enough for me. Between his punches and simply giving up on blocks, and like his ability to move players as a run blocker is a little undesirable to me. I do have him as my 9th tackle in this class. I'm comfortable with him in the 2nd round, but if he goes in the 1st round, I think that's going to be a pretty big reach, something I'd let other teams do if I were drafting. Then Sadiq Charles, a surprising early declaree out of LSU, and I'm very scared that teams are going to overdraft him because of the young profile, the athletic profile, the big school profile. This is, and I can honestly say the same about my next guy, Lloyd Cushenberry, also out of LSU. I think one reason, when I say Tua was a 7-on-7 clinic, people always bring up Joe Burrow. They're like, well, Joe Burrow had a great surrounding core too. Well, if you really watch LSU, Sadiq Charles and Lloyd Cushenberry, quite frankly, were getting their ass kicked all season. They were not good, period. And Joe Burrow, like, we saw all the amazing plays Joe Burrow had to make. A big part of that was Lloyd Cushenberry and Sadiq Charles letting guys through. So I like their athleticism on day 3. If you have a good offensive line coach, maybe they can develop, but I'm not taking Sadiq Charles or Lloyd Cushenberry round 2 or round 3 where they're probably going to go. Next up, interior defensive line. It's just not a very exciting class, so not a whole lot of guys on this list. But Malcolm Roach, I think the athletic profile, a guy that played a lot of edge in college, worth a gamble to see if you can get that Deshaun Hand hybrid defensive end to come in, play a little more inside at the next level, and really utilize that quickness. He also has really nice get off and a power rush that I think will play better on the inside, just kind of being that disruptor. So I like Malcolm Roach, 4th round. And then Jashawn Cornell. I compare him to Danico Autry. He's an undersized guy. He's going to be a little inconsistent against the run because he doesn't hold blocks. He doesn't block shed, but he will shoot gaps and like gamble against the run, which can be really hit or miss, but it's exciting when it hits. But as a pass rusher, I think he's really disruptive. He completely filled the Draymond Jones role at Ohio State as that undersized interior kind of 3-tech, 4-eye tech to be that 3rd down disruptor on passing downs. And he actually played about as well as Draymond Jones did. He's a little older as a prospect than Jones was coming out, but I did like Jones last year, and I think Jashawn Cornell can be a disruptive sub-package defender at the next level, which in the 4th round is definitely worth a shot. It's just hard to find guys that size, that physical, that will fly off the ball like Jashawn Cornell. Then I only had one guy on my not my guys for defensive line, and that was Jordan Elliott. There's a lot of guys that have come out of Missouri that have some kind of nice highlight plays where they're all like these finesse rushers that can do spin moves, club and rips. Like, they have a decent package of pass rushing moves, but the consistency just isn't there, and the physicality and play strength just isn't there. And I like a lot of that stuff. I like the foot quickness. I like the moves they bring to the table. But I've seen a lot of hype on Jordan Elliott. I could see him being a day 2 pick, an early day 3 pick. And I just like a lot of guys a lot better because they play a lot more physical. And those like super finessey guys where they almost just stand up right away at the snap and then try to dance around guys, it just doesn't really work at the next level. And we've seen guys come out of this school that are very similar, that I've frankly been burned on, and I think Jordan Elliott's going to be pretty similar. All right, on the edge, my guys, Anfernee Jennings. I believe in the power. I believe in the playmaking instincts. The dude's just a football player. You don't necessarily take him expecting some elite pass rusher. I think he's kind of like a disciplined Bud Dupree, which sounds pretty good, right? I think he's one of the better power rushers in this entire class. Some teams value that more than others. Some teams prefer a speedy, finessey guy that'll bend around the edge. That's not necessarily Anfernee Jennings. But I think in the right spot, he can be a really good player. I'd grab him late round 2, early round 3. Then Bryce Huff, same thing. He didn't actually get a combine invite, which was really surprising. One of the more productive pass rushers in college football. But he has that explosiveness off the ball. He is tenacious. He plays with way more effort, get off, and physicality than most edge rushers in this class. Put him on a team that just values the ability to get pressure, push the pocket, maybe not always going to get off blocks, and maybe not always going to finish the sack, but simply winning your matchup one-on-one and driving back the tackle because you're so good at getting your hands inside and playing low and running your feet. can really work in a lot of schemes. I look at teams like Baltimore, New England, who really value that skill set right there. I think Bryce Huff can be a good player in the NFL. Then Carter Coughlin, much different player. He is a finessey guy. He is a hybrid edge outside linebacker. This is one of the best edge outside linebacker hybrid classes we've maybe ever seen. But I think you're seeing guys like Zach Bond, Josh Uche get a lot of hype in this class that Carter Coughlin isn't receiving, when Coughlin is just as good of an athlete, was actually as productive, if not more. Put him in a situation like New England, like Detroit, Miami, where they want that flexible hybrid edge guy that can rush the passer and cover a little bit. The one thing Coughlin doesn't do quite as well is hold his blocks and be a run defender, so I get some of that lack of play strength is there, which is why I do like the other guys better. But I think the gap is a lot closer than the current draft market would indicate. And then the last guy here, Derek Tuszka. If you're going to take a late round flyer on an edge guy in a really bad edge class, take a guy that is coming from a smaller school that was really productive, showed excellent technique and football IQ, does lack some of that athleticism, but I really don't like this edge class, and I think he can at least be a third or a fourth guy and be a great special teamer. Then not my guys, Jabari Zuniga. I just didn't see a whole lot there. I didn't see a whole lot of finesse. I saw some decent athleticism, but nothing crazy. A guy that is rumored to go round 3, round 4. I wouldn't do it. He seems like just a guy to me that didn't really develop, despite having an athletic profile. I would take him, late day 3, but not where he's projected to go. Then Nick Coe, he's a converted outside linebacker, massive body. I will say I have no idea why his school played him as an outside linebacker when he's built like a defensive tackle. So you at least have that going in his favor, but he took plays off. Played with virtually no physicality on a consistent basis. I don't believe in the player, and I don't think he's a draftable player, whereas he might go in the 3rd or 4th round. Then Trayvon Hill, another kind of explosive get-off guy, but brings virtually nothing to the table, and then he comes out the combine, runs like a 4.82. Didn't develop in college. A guy that could go 3rd, 4th round, and I just simply wouldn't draft him. Then at linebacker, I like a lot of these linebackers here. Really good athletes in this class. So Willie Gay, I just think he's such a good football player that it's worth gambling on the off-field stuff. Quite simply put right there. Logan Wilson, just an incredible football player out of a small school, but a really nice athletic profile. Comes downhill with great acceleration and force. Like, he'll take on blocks in the run game. He's smart in coverage. He'll jump routes in like a hook zone. Doesn't have that quickness to man guys up, but I think he'll be far from a liability in coverage at the next level. Then Khaleke Hudson, converted safety. He plays really physical at his size. He is, at this point in the NFL, not even undersized. He's like 5'11", 220, which is basically what Devin Bush was coming out of Michigan last year. He's a little skinnier for sure, but he can definitely be that dime linebacker, your weak side linebacker if you're a 4-3 team, and be a guy that can match up tight ends and slot wide receivers and running backs. Same thing can be said about Davian Taylor out of Colorado. Very similar prospect, just a super athlete with some size and thickness. He's not quite as physical against the run as Khaleke Hudson was, so I think he might be a little more of a liability on rundowns. Might be a true dime linebacker, but his coverage upside is really remarkable. I think he's right there with Akeem Davis-Gether, who has a lot of hype in this class. And then David Woodward, to me, he's just the smartest linebacker in this class, like, period. Was always in the right place, showed some good kind of short area quickness, used his length really well to get off blocks. His tape is some of the best in this class. It's just the athleticism is a turnoff here. But in the 4th, 5th round, I think you're getting a quality NFL player that can be a 2nd or 3rd linebacker for you. Just probably never a guy that's going to be your number 1 linebacker. Marcus Bailey, just a good player with injury concerns. I think worth a gamble in the 5th round. And then Justin Strnad showed some nice things in coverage. Kind of that always in the right place at the right time kind of guy, a craftier coverage player. Not an elite athlete, but a good athlete. Kind of understands route concepts and does a good job getting his hands in passing lanes. So that kind of coverage ability, I think, is definitely worth a gamble over a lot of other guys that just didn't show that in college. And then I only have one not my guy at linebacker. It's Zach Bond. Now, I need to put a disclaimer here. if you are Miami, New England, Detroit, or the New York Giants, I can get behind that round 1, round 2, because he is the perfect hybrid edge defender. But I'm seeing a lot of people wanting to take him and convert him completely to off-ball linebacker, which is something that has a precedent of not working in the NFL. Notably, Hassan Reddick. I think even Anthony Barr has kind of been an overrated player over the course of his career, who probably should have just stuck at edge. But I will say, if you're taking Zach Bond to be that hybrid outside linebacker, to be Kyle Van Noy, to be Jamie Collins, he could be a really good football player. So I don't want to say he's a complete bust. I'm going to be really excited about the pick if he goes to one of these 4 teams. But if you're looking at Baltimore or Green Bay, converting him to a true middle linebacker, I just don't think he has the reps and the experience to do that day one. It would be a project pick, something you would do in the 3rd or the 4th round, not in the top 50. All right, cornerbacks. I just wanted to note my top 9 guys for my guys. None of them specifically I'd be pounding the table for, but all of my top 9 guys, I did my video yesterday. If you want to go back and look at my top 9 corners, I would certainly be looking to get them based on, where I have them ranked. I think it's a position that is definitely worth gambling on. So I didn't want it to be on the record that I didn't like any of those guys in my top 9, because really all of those guys I would at some point probably be pounding the table for. But then Darnay Holmes, I believe in the character, the work ethic, a guy that had a lot of distractions, trying to finish his degree in 3 years, some family issues, but the number 1 corner coming out of college. I think he can be a day 1 starter in the slot. He's not completely locked in the slot, though. He's kind of 5'10", 5'9", right on the boundary of sort of what height you need to be to play on the boundary. It's not unheard of for guys like Chris Harris, Brent Grimes. I want to say Casey Hayward's like 5'11", 5'10". So it's not unheard of to be a boundary corner. There's a chance he works out there, but he absolutely, and plays physical, can be a dominant slot corner. So I like Darnay Holmes, 3rd round. And then just some kind of late round guys here that I think showed some nice things, that have a chance to be starting caliber players, that also have a nice physical profile. So Dane Jackson out of Pitt, a smart player, quick. Kendall Vilder has that long speed you look for. He can be a man cover defender right away. You need to coach some zone instincts into him, though. Probably not a day 1 starter. Neville Clark is kind of that lengthy press man corner that I think you can get 5th, 6th round, that could come into a scheme like Seattle, Jacksonville, and compete for a starting job. And then Shyheim Carter is an interesting, versatile sort of nickel corner, hybrid safety kind of guy. Never going to be a starter, I don't think, but someone that's getting pushed into the 6th, 7th round. If you need a 6th defensive back, if you run a lot of dime packages, Shyheim Carter would definitely be on my radar because of that versatility. And he just kind of moves well. He's got some nice quickness, some speed to run man, can do a little bit of everything. Again, never going to be a star player, but I think you're getting some really quality depth there in Shyheim Carter that will make an impact in sub packages. I compare him to Shandon Sullivan, who did a lot of that for the Green Bay Packers. And then not my guys, Damon Arnett, a guy that sounds like he's probably going to go in the 2nd round. Definitely willing to let someone else take a chance on him. I just like my other corners better. He doesn't have the best zone instincts. He's a physical player, not the smartest player. He ran a lot of man coverage at Ohio State, but he's slow. There's not a good track record of man cover corners that run in the 4, 5, 6 range, turning out to be really good players. And he had some inconsistency in college. So I think he's a good depth play, can be your 4th corner, come on the field and not be lost. He's a relatively smart physical player, but he's not some brainiac zone coverage elite guy, you know what I'm saying? Which I think he's going to need to be to warrant a 2nd round pick as a zone cover defender, because with his lack of speed that he showed on tape, that he showed at the combine, I just don't think he's going to be a very good man corner, at least a starting caliber man corner at the next level. And then Cameron Dantzler, I like him. I like him for the same reasons I liked Neville Clark as that press man lengthy corner. And I like Cameron Dantzler better than Neville Clark. I would take Cam Dantzler ahead of Neville Clark, but I'm not taking him in the 2nd round. Reminds me a lot of Lonnie Johnson last year, who had some buzz, made some plays at Kentucky, that lengthy 6'2" corner, but was slow. Went to the Texans in the 2nd round. I hated the fit because they don't run that press man cover 3 scheme. They asked him to run more man coverage, and he got obliterated as a rookie. thought he was a 3rd or 4th round prospect, got drafted in the 2nd round. So that's kind of my comparison, is Lonnie Johnson for Cam Dantzler. And then same thing for AJ Green. He's just not a good athlete. He's a lengthy guy, does have pretty decent zone corner instincts, but I think he needs to go to one of these press man schemes. If he ends up like Lonnie Johnson last year, they ask him to run all over the field and run man coverage, receivers are just going to turn this guy into the spin cycle and run right around him. Last up, my safeties. I love me some Antoine Winfield. End of the 1st round, I'd be pounding the table for him. If we need a safety, he would be the first guy I would take. Whether it's strong safety or free safety, he can do everything. I compare him to Tyrann Mathieu. Then Julian Blackmon. Talked about him in my safeties video yesterday. Coming in off an ACL, I think he's a guy that if he was able to finish the season and go through the pre-draft process, and then you add on the corona situation with all of this lack of communication and visits and all this stuff, medical information, I think he's just been completely swept under the rug in a bit of a weird year. But an ACL injury in December, he'll be about ready to go when the season starts. You might need to ease him in a little bit. He is going to miss out on a lot of that time over the summer to rehab and get completely ready. But I think he's very similar to Marcus Williams, to Marcus Blair, who were 2nd round picks out of Utah, played this scheme, dominated the free safety position, showed those instincts, showed the understanding of the scheme, what he needed to do, when he could gamble, when he needed to play back, came up, a physical tackler, the ideal free safety, and he's a good athlete. He's even played some corner and understands their responsibilities. So I love Julian Blackmon, early 3rd round, even late 2nd, depending on what safeties have gone. I think he's just going to be a really good free safety at the next level. Then L'Jarius Sneed, I would take him in the 3rd, 4th round just because the physical profile is worth gambling on at that position. Once you kind of get past the likely starters in this draft, he's one of the first players and the first names that would come to my mind as far as guys that aren't day 1 starters that have some pretty crazy upside. A 6-foot free safety with a 41-inch vertical that ran a 4.37, that had pretty good tape, that just needs to kind of learn to grow a little bit as far as his football IQ, but is a good tackler as well. I think he's absolutely worth a chance at that free safety position. One of a few guys in this class, it's a rarity in the NFL in general, that have potentially elite range as a center fielding free safety. Then J.R. Reed, kind of the opposite of L'Jarius Sneed. He is a lengthy, steady free safety that is a smart player, knows when to take risks, isn't a super fast guy, but does have good speed at his size, and that length makes up for it at times. I think he can be a low-end starting safety as kind of that higher zone free safety that you can get in the 3rd or 4th round. And then Daniel Thomas in the 4th round, strong safety out of Auburn. Quite simply put, he's really fast and tackles incredibly well. He's kind of that heat-seeking missile type, but I would almost say him and Jonathan Abram last year out of Mississippi State, one's overhyped, one's underhyped. You know, they're pretty similar players. He doesn't bring a whole lot to the table from a coverage standpoint, whether it's quickness, manning guys up, or just zone coverage instincts, but he's going to be a badass on special teams. I think you can coach in some of those coverage instincts. I think he's a competitive guy that has a chance to be a starting caliber strong safety. Another decent comparison for him would be Michael Thomas, the safety, not the wide receiver, that's been, I think, a Pro Bowl special teamer, has been in the league for a long time, is well respected amidst NFL circles because he's just a good football player. He might not do everything great, but has room in the NFL. And then, not my guys, the last guy on this list, Xavier McKinney. I expected to like him a lot more than I did after I really watched his game. Doesn't have that range that I thought he might have. I don't want him playing a lot of free safety, quite simply put. He's late getting there on sideline to sideline. He's also, at times, a little over-aggressive. And he doesn't have that makeup speed either. So he's not Eddie Jackson. He's much more Ha-Ha Clinton Dix. Closer to the box, though, shorter areas. He does have some good quickness, really elite playmaking instincts that I think can really be brought out more in that strong safety spot. But I like Antoine Winfield better, Grant Delpit, and I even like Ashton Davis a smidgen better. So Xavier McKinney actually my 4th safety, someone that could go in the top 20, top 24 picks. I just wouldn't do that, but I would be thinking about him early 2nd, absolutely. So that was a fun list. Kind of wrapping up my general thoughts, who I'm higher on, who I'm lower on. Please do hit that like button, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Cheers as always, and we'll see you tomorrow night. Peace.